Our film begins on November 9th in the year 2006. In the Ramadi neighborhood in the city of Iraq, we see a battalion of the U.S. Army going to a sniper site. And we see these forces choosing one of the civilian homes, because its location will be suitable for monitoring the place you want to monitor. And then the soldiers enter the house and ask the people of the house. They're using this place, a sniping site and surveillance operations, and they prefer every day to follow the movements of the people in the place, until one day, he felt a strange movement. At the time he would be with the band. This is a sniper. Elliot, when he saw what was happening at that time, reached the leader of the team, whose name will be Dan. He told him people started walking from the place. And if there is a suspicious movement around them, then Dan understood that an attack would happen, especially when the streets suddenly fell out of people. Among the cellars, and the whole area was completely empty. Dan told them, ND will be an invitation from the militants to jihad against them and know them, that the possibility of an attack on them. Commander Dan asked them to go down to the first floor and they wish him well. At this time, Elliot sees an Arab who stood in front of the house they are in. 4 people got out of it, and one of them was holding Lashnikov, and they entered the house in front of them. After a while, 6 people left the house. Suddenly, the soldiers found a bomb that surrounded them. And I entered them and exploded, and they don't run anywhere. At the time, Commander Dan Fattel called them one by one. He called out Frank, Tommy, Leo, and Ronnie. At that time, the soldiers will still not be on the ground. Suddenly, the fire hit them from outside the house. Her watches, too. They hit the gunmen with fire in a random way to protect themselves. And in them also the one who was crawling, including the one whose ammunition is finished. At the time, they informed Al-Qaeda that in a violent attack on them, they asked them to send them strong support quickly, and the sniper will be Elliot, clear his hand. At the time, the base will inform them there is an evacuation plane that will deliver them in exactly 10 minutes. At the time, the soldiers began to prepare themselves and take care of their needs. But Elliot, when he turned to his need, he couldn't find it and he had to take it, because it has a lot of ammunition. At that time, his colleague Frank came to her, and he came to her and put her on. And after they took all their weapons and equipment, he was in a launcher. 79 is missing, and they went to answer it, and everyone is ready. He had his weapon, and before they leave the house, the commander made a plan to exit. What exactly do they do? When the armored vehicle arrives, you will take them. Then they brought smoke bombs and threw them outside the house before they went out, because the gunmen do not hit them with fire. When the armored vehicle arrived in front of the house and opened the door for them, they went out too in the first place to be reassured. No one will target them, and when they find that there is no need, get away, they all come out. Before they boarded the armored vehicle, a bleeding device came down on them, or a shell that destroyed the whole place. And we see a soldier crawling to take his weapon, and be in another soldier. Fire and pain in his leg, and he calls out to his companions, and we see Franco leaving the house. He saw the bodies of his colleague in front of him, and he went quickly and help his colleague, and extinguish the fire that holds it. And it will be a very difficult scene for them. At this time, he is shocked and cannot believe what is happening. And we see one of the soldiers holding his weapon and hitting a fire. Although I don't see anything from the smoke that left the place. At the time, he was in a soldier pulling his wounded colleague. He enters the air of the house so that he can protect him, and this soldier will be hysterical and screaming along. At this time, the rest of the soldiers reach the base in the situation they are in. They ask them for help, and we see Frank standing in front of the body of the sniper Leo. And I can't believe that he's dead. And Radish does not enter the house and leave it, preferring to pull him and take him with him in the air of the house. He was calling on his colleague to help him, because in hitting fire on the other side on them, then they will receive orders from the base. They withdraw from the place immediately. At this time, the commander tells the base that his forces have suffered great losses, and the possibility of another attack at any moment, and he knows them that they have patients whose condition is very serious, and he asks them, they're sending help as quickly as possible, because the situation remained very dangerous. And when they asked him where you were, he said, you will know him from Smoke and Blood, who is in the place. At this time, he will be hitting fire on them. At the time, they know that Elliot is still not dead, but he was seriously injured. His whole body is shrapnel. Then they pulled him again to keep him away from the fire, and the earth is filled with his blood, and the commander is trying to rush the squad that is coming to them, because their lives were in danger and targeted. And we see the soldiers examining the injured, so that they know the extent of their injuries, continuing to wear and being in heavy and continuous fire on the house. He doesn't stop, and all the band will be busy helping the raptor. Mute, pleading. And they are upset at their friends who are bitching and screaming, and we will see the owner of the house they are in. He came out of his place and saw the condition of the wounded soldiers. At that time, a state of collapse occurred from the sight of the blood that filled the house, and the ugliness of the sight that was, I see it, and he wanted to go out, and the soldiers prevented him and entered him with his family again. But it was very difficult for them. and the soldiers were not able to see their friends while they were dying in front of them. At the time, Frank called the base and asked them for a medical evacuation as soon as possible. And he explained to them the difficulty of the situation in the wound, because they bleed so hard. At this time he will be hitting the fire. He is still working outside the house. I mean, any soldier will think that he comes out and move along. Of course they were all thinking, how do they help their friends and stop the blood because they are afraid not to lose them? Then it will have arrived, a plane to transport the injured, and we see the plane encroaching quickly and hitting a fire, so that you can trust them to go out. And we see Frank mute the wound to his colleague Ronnie, and Ronnie was crying, and Frank was calling out his colleague to say, take care of the roof ladder, because they can bring us down from above. And the case of Elliot and Ronnie will be very difficult and the bleeding will not stop. So they cut the wound and put quantities of gauze on it. And every little while they call the base to hurry them up, so that they take their friends before they die. Finally, the ethics squad arrived. And they were 2 minutes in front of them and it arrived, but they didn't know that. How do you get the injured out? Because their condition was very difficult and the fire was working along. Then soldiers think that they have analgesic injections. So they took these injections and gave them to their time in their legs, because they were very patalmo. At this time, a reconnaissance plane came and was exploring the place where the soldiers were. Then they saw gunmen on every street. Also on the rooftops of houses. At that time, they determined the location of the soldiers. Where did they know them? After that, I sold to the forces of another division to go to the wounded soldiers and help them out and get them out. And we are actually seeing forces from the American Army. She was around the house, and when orders came to them, the forces began to gather themselves. Go to the street where the wounded soldiers are. At the time, they clashed with the Mujahideen above the houses and shoot each other. And we see the leader of the squad, Patrick, while he was talking to the band with the injured. And he used to tell them that he was close to delivering them and comforting them. At the time, Patrick's team was covering each other and protecting each other in Burmo gas bombs until they can reach their friends. After they saw the condition of the injured, they told them the situation of the injured needed a medical team, because they did not know their condition is so difficult. Then Commander Patrick will reassure Commander Dan. And Commander Dan asked Patrick to take command of him, because he was completely collapsed. And I can't because of what happened, especially when he saw the remains of the soldiers who died in front of him. At the time, Commander Patrick asked his forces that they want the house well. Then Frank warned them and told them to take care of them, because there are bombs thrown at them from the window. At the time, there were soldiers looking at Elliot's condition. His injury was very difficult and he was bleeding. Then Commander Patrick decided they had to get out of this place quickly. He asked for support from Al-Qaeda and told them that he wanted 4 armored vehicles, 2 for them, and 2 because of Elliot and Ronnie. He was telling the soldiers they were getting ready to leave. And how many soldiers came to the roof of the house to deal with the armed snipers who strike fire on them? Reach the base. It's very difficult. And I need support to arrive as quickly as possible, because they are in danger, and because the condition of the injured deteriorates and they lose a lot of blood. But unfortunately, the leadership informed him that the support will not be able to deliver because the armored vehicle that came to transport Dana and his forces were completely destroyed. Of course, he was a student of 4 armored vehicles. He said that we sent 4 other armored vehicles to the same place. This is a decision I want many approvals, and it will take time because we are putting you all at risk. Again, Commander Patrick asked them to inform them of the condition of the injured people who were dying. Friendly is a great responsibility, because Elliot's condition is very serious. After they were informed of Elliot's serious condition, they agreed that they would send them support again. But the soldiers on the roof reported that the situation was very bad, and in heavy shooting at them from all roofs. And we see Patrick's forces beating fire on the gunmen. And we will return again to the injured, whose situation will be bad and dangerous. At this time there will be a clash between American forces and among the gunmen. At the time the forces hit one of the armed countries. They injured him and entered the rest of the forces and knew them, that the support forces would deliver them 4 minutes later, and they asked the forces above the roof to withdraw quietly. Prepare to evacuate. At this time, Commander Patrick, he knew them about the plan to get the injured out of the house. How do you care? Indeed, the first 2 armored vehicles will arrive and they will be closer to them, and the countries that will transfer them to the people who are infected with the Utonium. And we see the forces while they are preparing, and they were preparing the wounded to transfer them to armored vehicles. And because there is nothing with any medical possibilities, they wanted to make a stretcher to move them on it. They deliver them to the armored vehicle properly, then think they're moving them on a carpet. And we see them wrapping them in carpets. At the time, Elliot was very painful. Of course, they didn't have much time in front of them, because the armored vehicles were close to delivering them. Indeed, the armored vehicles have arrived. I stood in front of the house. Captain Patrick, he distributed tasks to his forces, and among them he left the place. And we will see this one. They raised the Elliot and put it on the carpet together. The armor stood right and north of the house. They opened the doors. The forces quickly went out with Elliot and entered him with the first armored vehicle. And Jabbo Rooney, the second, injured, and the earth will be shreds of the forces who died. In time, this is because the gunmen will hit heavy fire on them from the rooftops. But they were able to ride with the wounded, and the armored vehicles walked, and surely the armored vehicles have been transferred. Elliot and Ronnie, Commander Dan and Bacon's forces, Commander Patrick's forces waiting for armored vehicles. The second one is to arrive so you can take them. Commander Patrick then asked the command to report the armor. They hit the rooftops of the houses around them with tank guns, because the snipers don't see anything and can ride the armored vehicles safely. And the armor actually implemented the plan. I stood in front of the house, the doors opened and the soldiers got ready. As they came out, the armored vehicles were hitting fire on the roofs. And a plane arrived and hit a fire, and they started riding armored vehicles. I took them and moved and withdrew from the place. Then the owner of the house moved out of his place, he and his family. The gunmen walked the streets. After many years, the sniper Elliot is back in a wheelchair. He went to the same house that he and his colleague were in the year 2006, and this will be the story of saving the soldier Elliot in the days of what was a sniper in the U.S. Army. Iraq War days, we see the real Elliot while he is with the actor who played his role. And we will see, too, the real soldier Frank. This is Elliot's friend who cared about him at the time of the attack. And the length of his injury. After that, we see the injured Ronnie in a wheelchair. And we will see the leader Dan, who is nervous, I can't stand what happened. And we will see the pictures of the real house that I got in. All film events. In the other, the heroes of our movie take a group picture with the sniper soldier Elliot, hero of our story, and surely the summary of our movie is over. Today we are waiting for a new summary. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to reach you all our videos.